This is your Unit 4-2 review. We're checking our answers. Make sure you have the work that I have. You might have done it a different way, which is great, but just let's make sure that we're arriving at the same answer. The strategies that I have taught you for percentages are going to be used on this review. As I read question number 1, I'm looking at North Dakota. So I want to identify North Dakota and what amount in percent that is for sales tax. Because it's going to ask me how much is the tax on the $180. And it's 5% in North Dakota. So I'm going to use the strategy of what is 10% of 180. We have learned that 10% is movement of a decimal, which then makes it the number 18. Now to calculate 5%, 5% of 18 is like cutting this number in half and dividing by 2. So we want 18 divided by 2, and we're going to get 9. Now if we're talking about money, our answer is going to be in money terms, which is $9 whole and 0 cents. So we're using strategies of benchmarks to get there first. 10% cut in half to 5%. Now let's look at question number 2. We are actually going to purchase some items from different states. The first one is from Maine, and the second one is from Alabama. And I want the combined sales tax for both items. These involve more information because I actually have dollars and cents and they're not whole numbers. Maine sales tax is 6% and Alabama sales tax is 4%. So these are not benchmarks and I would need to calculate each one. Now either I can multiply through by the decimal or I can use my ratio table. I'm thinking I'm going to take Maine, which is $36.54, and multiply it through by the 6% sales tax. 6% must be written as a decimal. Changing percents to decimal is Dr. Pepper, moving it once, moving it twice, so it's going to be 0.06, and I'm going to be multiplying by 0.06. Our rules for multiplying decimals is just to multiply. When I multiply this through, I get these digits at the bottom. Now I need to apply the movement of the decimal. If I move my decimal the same amount that's sitting behind in my problem, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, I would move it 1, 2, 3, 4 places and get $2.19 because this 2 does not make the 19 go up. So Maine is talking about $2.19. Now when I do this same type of work for Alabama, but I'm purchasing $24.36, that Alabama is equal to 4%. Changing a percent to a decimal, Dr. Pepper, we're moving it once, move it twice, we end up with 0.04. So I'm going to multiply by 0.04. Sorry, let's make that a 4. I was using my 6. When I multiply this through by 0.04, I end up with the digits 9744. Now looking at where my decimal should go, I actually have 4 places behind the decimal. Count them, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I move over 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, money goes 2 places behind, so this 4 has no impact on the 7. So we're talking about Alabama being 0.97. Now I want the combine. Combine telling me I need to add these 2 numbers together. This is where I line up my buttons on a shirt and add. And when I add, I get 3.16. We're talking about money. So it is going to be $3.16. Now let's take a look at problem number 3. In problem number 3, I'm asked to analyze which bar has this decimal compared to a percent. So if I want to change my decimal to a percent, which is Dr. Pepper, decimal to a percent, I'm just going to move it twice. So I have 0.86, and I'm going to move it once, move it twice to the back, and I end up with 86%. Now I'm going to compare that to each bar. 86% is definitely more than half. If I cut this bar in half, we do not get 86%. If I cut this bar in half, I'm not near 86%. If I cut this bar in half, it looks like I have some more because this is 50%, and I want 86%. This bar is actually cut pretty much in half, so we're looking at which one would be the best representation, and we're going to say letter B. Now let's take a look at the graph here to answer questions 4 and 5. As I look at this graph and I look to see that I'm looking for a fraction that would represent soccer, and I want my fraction to be simplified, in other words, reduced. Up here I notice that soccer is valued at 45%. We know that all percentages are based on 100, that I've made a fraction now, and all I want to do is reduce. So if I divide by 5 on the top, divide by 5 on the bottom, I would get 9/20. Now I'm going to ask myself, is this a reduced fraction? And it is, so I'm going to write 9/20 as my simplified fraction. On problem number 5, it's asking me to write a decimal for football and basketball combined, meaning I've got to add the two together. Their percentages first must be changed to a decimal. We can do Dr. Pepper to do that. A decimal to a percent, but this time we're going percent to decimal, so I'm going to move it twice to the front. The basketball is 40%, and the football is 15%. So if I do my Dr. Pepper, move it once, move it twice, put in the decimal, move it once, move it twice, put in the decimal, and add, I end up with 0.55. So decimal 0.55, 55 hundredths is the decimal representation for both sports combined. And the last one we're going to look at in this video is looking at a bicycle, and we have to walk and bike 1/4 of the distance home. Which percent of the distance will she walk the bike home? So we're looking at a complete table here that 1/4 is just being asked what is the percent. This is a benchmark which is valued at 0.25. If I do my Dr. Pepper, move it once, move it twice, I end up with 25%. It's not asking me to compare it to anything else, but just what is that representation. So the representation of what percent is that distance, it's 25%. In the next video, we'll look at the next page of problems. Please make sure you have completed them before you check your review.